Are you a good leader or are you a great leader? Each one of us have thought of becoming a leader someday, leading ourselves to growth and leading others to growth and success. While some of us have that innate capability in us to lead with empathy, to lead with compassion, and to become a good leader. But then there are those who work really, really hard, who learn as they grow, and they come out to become very, very successful leaders. There's a famous quote that says that leaders are not born, but they are made, and they are made by hard work, because that is a price that we have to give for anything that we want to achieve in our life. You know, this means that each one of us has a capability of become a great leader. It's just that we have to unleash that mindset of compassion, the mindset of empathy, the mindset of growth, the mindset of empowering others. Because just like everything else, leadership is also a mindset. So we'll be discussing on leadership as a mindset today with Andrea Petrone, who's my new guest in Renaissance with Swati. And he is the top ranked executive coach and a speaker, and he is a leadership coach to various CEOs, and he's also the host of the World Class Leaders Show. Hi, Andrea. How are you doing today?
Hi, Swati. I'm good, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you. Whenever I scroll through my LinkedIn feed and see your posts, it's like always I resonate with them, and it's so inspired by you that I've become a huge fan, Andrea. Thank you so much for agreeing to be my guest. so,
Thank you. Well, it's good to hear, these words from you. I mean, posting and writing about about leadership, mindset, performance is time consuming. But it's rewarding when I hear, positive feedback and people say good things about what we write. So great. Thank you.
That's my pleasure. So, Andrea, would you like to tell something about your journey? Did you always know that you wanted to become a leadership coach, or how did you find out that this is what you want to do?
Yeah, so definitely I wasn't born with the idea of becoming an executive coach. Not at all. That was not my plan when I was a kid. Actually, I had very ambitious goals when I was very, very young. I can't tell you what was the ambition, but really too big even for a small kid. But maybe there was something already in me that was this driver of doing something meaningful, I would say. And since early days, I think I wanted to be different. I wanted to create something different, kind of extraordinary. But the reality is, I grew up in an environment of a small town, a small village north of Italy. And my family is fantastic principles, but also used to think, simple, to think about
Mhm.
enough is enough. Don't even take too much risk, do what is in your comfort zone, etc., etc. So in that environment, maybe instead of becoming one of the many living in their village with
Mhm.
these ideas,
Mhm.
maybe that became for me more kind of a trigger to do something different. And to me, that led to an extraordinary career I had. That when I was after uni, I started to work in many different places all over the world, primarily in Africa, North Africa, Middle East, and Egypt. And to me, that was already a first step in my leadership of creating something different than what all my peers and colleagues and friends
Right.
at uni used to do. That was, I think, a first sign. But the reality during that moment, I was already so much in tune into the idea of coaching people, and I started with sport coaching, and and then interesting years later in my career, whatever I was wishing for when I was younger, this idea of helping others, it came back at
Right.
some point. But then
Nice.
I can tell you more if you want to know the entire story. But yes, that's how
It's
we started.
That's really inspiring, coming from a small village. And I can relate that, people want to stay in their own comfort zone, stay in their shells, and do what everyone else is doing. Why to take risk? Go for that easy job and you'll be successful. That's it. But there are people who think differently, who want to create a change. Maybe I am also someone who wants to do something different. But like you said, that you traveled across the globe to different countries, and then that is where you find your calling. So how was that experience, talking to people from across the globe? Did you find any difference between the people's mindset? Because we are talking about the mindset today, or is it the same everywhere?
No, it was, and it was a game changer for me in Swati because um, the having early days a very international experience at work, but in the reality in life is really enriching because you started to notice how other people think. It's not only about what they do, so that's a little bit more the
Mm-hmm.
behavioral elements of different
Okay.
cultures. I think it's really more about how people think. And I've been lucky to meet people that were ambitious.
Mm-hmm.
I've been lucky of meeting people that were thinking
Mm-hmm.
non-conventionally, and
Right.
that all of that has really created to me an idea that, well, there is something here. There is a different way of thinking. Primarily, I would say from a mindset standpoint, from a place of limitation to a place of possibilities. And that's to me is the biggest mindset shift that happened to me because when you embrace it, you started to see the world in front of you in a very different way, with different lens, which is the
Yes.
whole point of the mindset shift.
That's so true because when we meet people who are different, who are from different cultures or diverse people, it opens up a whole new world in front of us that we might not have ever imagined if we did not meet them, if we stayed in that own shell. Yeah. So that's so true.
Absolutely. And that requires a big uncomfort because you're stepping into new territory that goes with different culture, different languages, different way of living and thinking. So I know everyone is honestly, in my experience, is so much tune in with this idea of embracing other point of views.
Mm-hmm.
They prefer being in their own world and say, well, that's my way of seeing things, that's my way of doing things. I'm gonna stay consistent because that is a safe path for me.
Right. So when did you discover that, leadership is a mindset?
Well, I discovered it later on, because at the beginning to me was, especially in my career, even when I was still traveling internationally,
Mm-hmm.
and I stepped into a very senior leadership role really early in my career. But the
Okay.
reality for me was, honestly, to me, leadership was more or less trying to get the most out of the people that were already leading. So like,
Okay.
my bosses,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
my people, my people to some extent, because I managed and led teams of
Mm-hmm.
people that were much more senior than me. There's a
Mm-hmm.
kind of an interesting um, story throughout my whole career. I always led people that were older than me. So I
Mm-hmm.
think I try to learn by, I wouldn't say by, repetition or copy and
Mm-hmm.
paste. I was trying
Mm-hmm.
to see whether there was some role modeling around
Okay.
me that
Okay.
could have led me different. But the
Mm-hmm.
reality was primarily was a leadership skill, a leadership style, how to treat people, how to manage
Mm-hmm.
conversation, how to
Mm-hmm.
talk, how to get something from people. It was more like transactional
Mm-hmm.
in some
Okay.
sense.
Okay.
What I
Okay.
realized later on, but that was later on when I started to do
Mm-hmm.
embrace coaching for myself, when I created my own
Mm-hmm.
leadership executive coaching practice, I started to realize very quickly that leadership is not really about skills. Leadership is about how you think. It's really about how you are able to shape people's perception. And when you think in that way, it in front of you, it open up another world. Because the reality is, what I learned from experience
Mm-hmm.
from incredible coaches I work with is people actions are always related to how they think. It's never related to how they do things. How they do things is just a
Mm-hmm.
practical action. The reality is we behave in based on what we
Mm-hmm.
see in our
Right.
current reality.
Right. Right. Right.
So
Right.
then I realized very quickly, Swati, okay, if you want to change your action, you
Mm-hmm.
need to change your current reality. But the reality is not something fixed. The reality is your perception and reality in your mind. When you change that perception, you
Mm-hmm.
start to see different things. You start to take different action. So that is a different results. That's leadership.
Okay. So as you said that you became a leader early on, senior leader early on, that means that there
Mm.
was something in you already, right? That could make you a good leader?
I think it was. I think it was. I would definitely say that I've always been very, very nice with people. And I think my level of empathy was very high at early days.
Okay.
So people get related to me very easily. And I think that created a stronger bond, especially with your people, with the people that you
Nice.
lead. As I told you before,
Mm-hmm.
I manage and led people that are way older than me. So imagine how can potentially end. So one option is they're gonna tell you, well, you're too young, you're inexperienced,
Right.
etc. I'm not going to follow your leadership.
Right.
The other option is, wow, I see that you're still younger than me, but I see that you are trying hard. You are good with me. You are a person of integrity. You are a trustworthy person, and you really care. Well, that's what happened to me, and I think that's changed completely my relationship with my people.
Yeah, and I can so relate to it because there are people who sometimes do not want to work under people who are younger than them. They think that, we are more experienced. But then there are others who find out the true caliber of a person and then they give them opportunities. And that is, I feel, that is what a good leader is, who value the capabilities and caliber of a person instead of the years of experience.
Absolutely, I agree with you,
Okay.
100%.
So, as you said that, you see leadership as a mindset and it is able to change people. But is it actually? Because to change a person's mind, to change how a person thinks, it's not that easy, right? As in, if they have some perspectives of their own, some viewpoints of their own, the way they work, the way they behave, is it possible to change that?
It's possible. It's absolutely possible. Now, the reality is what we see in our own world, Swati, is a reflection of our education. It's a reflection of our studies. Is a reflection of our values. Is a reflection more than anything else of our experience. I'll give you an example.
Okay.
When you are in an organization and you are going through a major change initiative, so you are a leader and you want to drive change in an organization, how many times you faced, people, they are the recipient of the change, being very resistant, say, no, sorry, I can make a change, or even if they say they want to, but the reality is their action, they're not aligned with what they say.
Right.
The reality is because most of the time their experience about change has been incredible negative. And when people they face as an experience some specific ways of things, of events, of course, their way of thinking is consistent with their experience. So what you have to do, you have to try to allow people to see something that they don't see at the moment. It's all about perception. So you have to, as a coach, that's the work I do, is try to help people to see something different than their current reality, because otherwise they are confined in their own box. That is full of beliefs, it's full of opinion, it's full of limitations. When you are able to go outside of your box and see different boxes around you, I can tell you, I've seen people, to change in a second once they started to really embrace a new perspective about the world in front of them. Sometimes it takes 6 months, sometimes it takes 12 months, sometimes for people it's very difficult, but sometimes really could be a matter of a few days. That's why leadership is potentially impactful in a very short term. You don't need to go 6, 12 months, 24 months leadership training, etc., because it doesn't work in that way.
People should be receptive, right? They should be receptive to change. They should be receptive to learn new things.
They should be. Otherwise, they're not coachable. Otherwise, they would say, my point of view is the only view. Sorry, I'm not interested.
Right.
And you're right. And to do that, there is one fundamental attitude that needs to be in place, which is an element of curiosity. So without curiosity, without this sense of discovery about different point of views about the situations, people will never be able really to embrace something, to their self-discovery, but also discovery of others. The job is done, meaning there is not really much to do.
Nice, nice. So when you go out and when you coach people, how do you find that, this person would be receptible? So as you coach the CEOs, the executive level people, so when they reach out to you for leadership coaching, what do you see in them that, yes, this person has the potential to become a great leader, to become a good CEO?
Well, to be fair, it's an easy answer. To some extent, by the way, it's a tricky answer. So it's easy in theory because if people approach me to do coaching, because probably or 99% of the time, they already consider and think that something is not working and they want to make a
Mm,
difference and a change. So
right,
normally they are already with the right mindset to be
right,
the discovery for themselves.
right, right.
Other times, which is more, I would say, the tricky part of your question is sometimes you step into organizations where maybe the CEO decides that, oh, Andrea, I want Andrea to coach you guys.
Right.
And then in that experience, sometimes I feel that there are maybe some people in their leadership team, in other teams, they are not really coachable. They're not interested because they believe they know more, they know better, and they know
Okay.
enough. And when that's
Okay.
the situation, well, there is no way, of coaching someone. And that's fine. That's fine. I mean,
Okay. Okay.
we shouldn't force coaching. Coaching should be a self-made decision about yourself.
Absolutely. A self-made decision about yourself. If somebody is reaching out, like you said, they know that they are in need of some change, and that is why they're reaching out. But then if the corporates are forcing them to just go and get the coaching done, sometimes they will just go for the sake of it. They will not be open
Exactly.
enough.
Just
So,
to please the CEO, etc., not really for themselves.
right. So when you work with all these people, how do you differentiate between a good leader and a great leader?
So there are so many different definitions of good and great leadership. To me, and I think they're all valid. They're all valid. People say, well, leaders are people, they're bringing people with them. Or great leadership is when you can elevate other people around you. Uh, there are different ways. To me, probably the most profound great leadership definition is when you're able to unconsciously create that sense of desire in people around you to step up their game because they see you as a real integral role model. And
Okay.
when you have that feeling that people, they feel like, I want to be like you, I want to follow your leadership, I want to take you as a role model, I want to step up my game. That is an incredible level of fulfillment for a coach, but also for a leader in general. So great really to me about seeing people around you, feeling the urgency, the desire to step up their own game, to raise their own
Okay.
standards. So, because
Okay.
leadership is, to me, if you're looking for greatness, you need to look for raising your standards. Raising your standard
Okay.
is really creating something different for yourself and, you know, fulfill your own potential because you have something in you. So that's leadership.
Nice. So is it more related to a person's IQ or a person's EQ?
It's definitely EQ, but it's even beyond that because IQ is our intelligence level, and you can test it for that, which has nothing to do in direct correlation with leadership.
Mm-hmm.
EQ is an element of emotional intelligence, so how good you are, with people.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, great leadership definition is much more profound. It's really is elevating yourself, make sure that you are able to you know, take out all your real potential because I truly believe in a world of possibilities that everyone has potential. You have potential. I have potential. My friend have potential. We all have potential.
Mm-hmm.
Great leadership is the ability really to bring people to the maximum level of their potential. Because otherwise,
Okay.
what's the point? And I do believe humans have all incredible potential.
Okay, great. So, this is a startup era. Everyone st wants to start their own venture, start their own companies. We see so many CEOs rising up, some fresh out of the college, they become the CEOs, and then somebody who, just leaves their job and starts their own firm. So, in such a scenarios, what not to do? Because we see that there are certain CEOs who succeed, then there are certain CEOs who fail. So why do you think the CEOs fail?
Specifically in the startup world in general.
first talk about the startup world, maybe?
Well, there are different reasons why potentially they fail, but probably the failure. By the way, first of all, I think we should really reframe the word failure, because what failure, especially in the startup world, is just a test that didn't go well. So if you approach life, also your leadership, as a form of experiment, you are testing something, you try, you learn from your mistake, and you do something different, that's, to me, is not failure. It's fantastic learning way to discover something more for yourself, by the way.
Right.
But I would say that, look, the CEOs either, so beside the startup world, I think the CEOs fail for a number of reasons. So in my experience, I would say primarily one of the main reasons, and I would say it happened to me in my personal discovery, is, when you start to bring your own status, title, and your ego to some extent upfront. You lead by title, by status, by ego, and you forget who you really are. What's your purpose? And what does it mean? Going back to my point before about elevating people, by, make sure people, they elevate their own abilities.
Right.
So I see a lot of CEOs that get stuck in their own title, in their own status, and they lose focus. And it happened to me. So when I became a CEO at 35, to me, Swati, what I noticed is it sounds like everything I touched became gold. And when you started to have that sense of power, from one end, it's very motivating, right? It's dopamine driven. But the reality, you lose focus about other things. And I started to lose focus. So to the extent that my experience after that was less enjoyable, and I got a couple of my own learning and failures. And that's why I actually decided to hire a coach for the first time. So my becoming a coach for me was a result of going through a difficult relationship with myself, different experience of having led an organization with the wrong mindset. So title, status, ego, this is the first reason why many leaders fail.
So that is about the startup world, like you said, from your own experience. But then, like you said, it is kind of a lesson for you, and that lesson in turns teaches you to become better version of yourselves, like you did, right? But then what about the companies who are already stable, and still we see, at once upon a time that company was at its peak, but today it's not at its peak anymore. And so stable companies also fail sometimes. Is it the leadership?
It's about leadership, absolutely. So the thing I said about the startup, so ego, title, status, they apply to every size organization. The other things that happen in other CEOs, they actually fail in medium, large organization. I would say the main reason is they get too much complacent. They much to get complacent about the status quo, and they don't anymore try to innovate, try to become something different, going back to the original purpose of the organization. They get complacent. And when you get complacent, you started to lose traction about what's really happening. And so you see incumbent competitors to start to erode your market share because they have something much more innovative. They understand better the customer. They have a better understanding and relation with employees. So there are a number of reasons why companies start to fail. But I would say complacency is the number one. And the second point is losing really their talent. And that's really true as a function of their leadership. And talent nowadays, and I post very often on this on LinkedIn. And also, by the way, I speak a lot with CEOs on the world-class leaders on my podcast, and they all come up with culture. Either or, they all come back. It's not me, it's them saying, my main goal in my role as CEO was changing the culture, driving the culture, because the culture is the only real enabler for incredible results and performance. If you rely too much on systems, processes, blah, 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 that's not going to make any difference because organizations are made by humans and they work if the human systems work, not if the business systems work. So culture is either you create something healthy, meaningful, and drive high performance. Otherwise, culture is going to bury you as a CEO.
Okay. All right. Like you said that, attrition or people leaving a company because the leadership is not good. So, but then there are
Yes.
some people who stay for the company itself. So, if I have to ask that, should you stay for a good company or should you stay for a good leader, a good job versus a good leader? What should be the answer for those people?
That is $1 million question, because my answer could be different than other people answer, to be fair,
Okay.
because it's a personal relation that we have with our own company.
Mm.
I would say from experience, if you work in a toxic environment with a toxic leader, regardless how great is the company,
Mm-hmm.
leave, because you're not going to learn. You're not going to get promoted. You're not going to be respected. You're not going to
Mm-hmm.
be appreciated,
Right.
valued, etc., etc., etc. So it's a trade-off. Do you prefer be treated
Mm.
poorly, but just because you work with a Fortune company, or you
Right.
prefer working with a different company, but you feel really engaged, motivated, you have joy, you're happy to go work every single day, and you feel really valued? That's, to me, the answer is very, very easy. I
Right.
would say for some people, as what the reality is, it's difficult to make these decisions. It's really difficult because maybe they're concerned about the future.
Right. Right.
They don't want to leave a good company,
Mm-hmm.
perceived good company with a good brand, because they
Mm-hmm.
might lose reputation, they might lose
Right.
status,
Right.
power, whatever. But honestly, I've seen so many leaders, they stayed in a toxic environment and they burn it out totally. So I don't think that's negotiable.
I agree to that because in a toxic environment, you just face burnout and you're not given that opportunity to grow as well. But then again, I've heard it from people and I've also seen in my personal experience that, you find good leaders and bad leaders everywhere, or
Mm.
you find such toxic environments everywhere. So, as a leader, how to navigate through that toxicity, or, how to become that leader who can eradicate that toxicity. Is that possible?
It is possible. And of course, the higher you are in the rank, the
Mm-hmm.
easier it is to change the system. So,
Mm-hmm.
look, one of my latest viral posts on LinkedIn, it was interesting because it was about exactly to this point. And I said there are
Mm-hmm.
three only options. So one is you
Okay.
stay, you fight, and you take responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Second, you play the victim and you complain and you keep complaining, but you stay. And third, you try hard, you fight, you really fought very hard, and you try everything. You took responsibility, you apply different
Mm-hmm.
leadership. Still, that didn't work. Well, then you leave. So I think if you're in a leadership position, Swati, it's not
Mm-hmm.
only an opportunity to influence the system, actually is your responsibility to change the system.
Right, 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 right. So, like you said, that you work with the CEOs day in and day out. So, those CEOs, do you think that, with your coaching, they are in that mindset that they will not let toxicity creep in? Is it possible to not let it creep in?
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely. So I've been working with organizations that are really going to eradicate toxicity and change the culture for the better.
Okay,
So they are
okay,
up for the game, they are ambitious, they are driven. The reality is culture is not like it's not like, getting new clients or increasing the revenues of 20%. It's something less visible and it takes a bit more time than short-term results. So you need to be interested in changing the culture. But you can, and you can make other people interested, like the board or your investors, if you
right,
demonstrate how culture can lead better results. The challenge I
right.
see most of the time, investors, shareholders, etc., or sometimes CEOs, they say, okay, that's his results and that's his culture. So culture is for you guys, HR, deal with that.
Okay,
Culture is the company. It can be delegated.
right,
So
right.
it depends how much importance is given to culture.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because it's on the top. It's a culture, it's imbibed in the whole the value or the values that that company possess that comes from the top. It cannot be given only by the HRs.
Absolutely. It starts from the CEO. really.
It starts from the CEO. Right, right. Okay, so Andrea, then as a coach, what would you say that, 5 things that you should not do as a leader?
5 things that I should not do as a leader. Okay. Number one priority is don't do something different than what you said. That's number one. So integrity plays an incredible role when it comes to leadership.
Mm,
So I strongly believe that if you really want to be a role model, your words need to be consistent with what you say. So your action need to be consistent with what you're saying, with your words. So that's to me is number one. Second is put your team always at the core, at the top of your mind. Don't consider always only the clients, only the shareholders, only other people, as more important than your people. Your people are
mm,
your most important thing. So always focus on your people and make sure that you spend
mm.
valuable time with them, understanding better what they do and what they aspire for. So that's really important.
Right, right.
Number three, I would say is, as a leader we said before, you really need to create some sense of discovery for yourself. Live in discovery.
Mm-hmm,
So be curious about every single interaction that you're gonna have during the day.
mm-hmm.
Your boss, your peers, your colleagues, your direct reports. Enter in any conversation with an incredible level of curiosity,
Okay.
not only to learn something new, but trying to see where there is a different perspective that you haven't considered before. That is a massive game changer. So, and that's consistent with what we said before, because leadership is
Mm.
mindset, right?
Right, right, right.
The other thing I would say is number four is your language. Your language matters. The way how you talk is really important because there is a one way of talking that is really more about descriptive, talking about the past, complaining, blaming, analyzing. I wanted to move the needle and think about my language as to be able to, one, generate different perspective in people so you can influence them. And second, has to
Right,
be driven, has to be able to drive commitments in people, actions. So be specific, be direct, and be clear about
right,
your talking.
right,
Okay.
right.
And number five, I would say that's probably because it's relevant to the word that we've been talking to, etc. Is make sure that you lead with an incredible level of respect, care, and empathy. So you are a human leader and you demonstrate that you are a leader because that's how you're going to get the most of people, by being human. So be human in any single occasion, not only when you need and only when you ask for. Make it as your own stand.
Nice. That's wonderful advice. So, Andrea, one question again. So, as you said that you chose leadership coaching over becoming a leader, right? So, why do you think if people want to switch from becoming a leader or a CEO, then to become a leadership coach, what advice for those people who want to, endeavor into the coaching world, leadership coaching?
Well, look, I think it's really difficult to say, because we don't know what really is driving people. But what I would say is, regardless what's going to be your final decision, make sure that what you do is really consistent with your purpose, with your why. So why you're doing what you do, and what's the bigger game that you are playing or you want to play for yourself. In 5 years' time, who you really want to be. But most of all, why you want to be a CEO, or why you
Mm-hmm.
want to potentially become an entrepreneur, or
Mm-hmm.
what is for you and for others. What's really the impact that you want
Right,
to generate in the
right.
next 5 years? That's gonna be really the driver and the leader to any decision, because otherwise you might just be, you might just make a decision based on stress, based on frustration based on ideas. Working and living as an executive coach, it could be incredibly fulfilling. For me, it's been an incredible journey now. Now it's 6 years. Fantastic. I had the opportunity to work with some incredible people all over the world. Amazing. Fantastic. And I interview a lot of people. So it's good really to talk and to meet people that are making an impact out there. But it's not an easy journey. It's not an easy journey as for any entrepreneur. You need to create your positioning. You need to be visible. You need to get your first clients. You need to go through your own confidence because, people, you're in front of people that are important in a session, maybe or 3 days, and people are expecting from you. So there is an element of stress, of expectation, your own self-confidence. So you need to go through a different journey. So people might think, well, that's easy. I'm going to be there and coaching, asking a few questions to people. No, it's not really that.
Okay. Like you said, where you want to be in 5 years. That seems to be a very simple question when it's asked in the interview. But then most of us, keep on running the race and we are like, we just want to go from one level to another, to another, to another. We do not think over what we want to become in the next 5 years. We're just running that race.
You know why? Because we are so much entrenched into the current reality, going back to what we said before, to the today's world, to the short-term things. Episode I need to record, or a report I need to submit, a conversation I need to have. Really, but what does it matter? What does it matter for you if it's not aligned with a bigger aspirational future that you want to create for yourself? But if you're not clear, as many of us are because it's difficult to be clear about the future. Keep exploring. If you don't have yet the answer, don't rush. Keep exploring because things will get clear at some point.
Nice. That's wonderful, Andrea. My last question is that, as a podcast host and the World Class Leaders show, so you talk to a lot of people. So how does it feel being a podcast host and also being a podcast guest to so many people? How does it feel to be on both sides of the table?
It's very different. So I think that being a podcast guest, here's an interesting reflection for you and for many people. They are interesting to be a guest in a podcast. Talking through yourself, your experience, etc., your position is going to help you a lot to become more clear about yourself. So the invitation is be a podcast guest as much as you can because it's going to really help you get clarity about yourself. Believe me, I had so many guests on my show. At the end, they said, Andrea, that was more like a therapy. It was more like a session. So I really learned a lot about myself, which is interesting.
Exactly.
Which is a very interesting experience. So, then of course it depends to the host, creating the environment and context for that happen. In terms of my show, it's been now 3 years. We are now about to hit the 3 years mark. 150 at the time of this recording, 155 episodes recorded every single week, non-stop. And I interviewed from C-suite leaders to CEOs of global organizations to best-selling authors. They are New York Times bestseller authors, and up to, by the way, Nobel graduates. So I had a chance to interview someone that won a Nobel Prize in 2012. So it's been an incredible experience. But it is because I approach it with a sense of discovery.
Nice. And, getting to that level that you can talk to a person who's a Nobel laureate or, a CEO of a top organization, it's not easy. I'm sure the journey might not have been that easy, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not. So you have to be, definitely there's an element of confidence. So you need to have proper confidence.
Yeah.
When you meet people, they are like them. I always suggest people consider yourself always in being in conversation with equal footing. So you're not less important than others, equal footing. So you are together, have a conversation and approach in the way rather than feel like you are, an imposter and you shouldn't be there.
You know, when I approached you, I never thought that you would accept my invitation, because what level you are and what I'm just starting in the podcasting world as a passion, and where you are, I never thought that you would accept my invitation, but you still did. That shows that, you treat everyone as equal.
Yes, absolutely, I did, and I'm happy that I did. But also, I started to get to know you through the comments that you were,
Mhm.
consistently making on my LinkedIn.
Mhm.
It made a lot of sense to me, and to me, that's
Mhm.
a good sign. And that's
Mhm.
something I would like to have a conversation with. So yes, but also because you demonstrated, to
Nice.
to be right to have a conversation. So
That's
well
wonderful.
done of reaching out.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Andrea. Any last points or any last tips for everyone out there, the budding leaders out there?
Not really much. I think we covered the territory, Swati. I would only say is leadership is a function of your attitude. So your ability to demonstrate to be a leader goes beyond the skills that you have. It goes first in accordance to your attitude. So going back to leadership as a mindset, the question for you, do you have the right attitude to lead right now? That's a question that I will ask myself every single time. Do I have the right attitude to lead today? Am I in a good mood? Am I in good spirit? I'm able to be curious. I'm able to not show up, bad emotions. I'm able to control myself. I'm able to smile and be positive. These are all things that everybody can do. Everybody can do. We don't need to have 30 years of experience in being a CEO to lead in that way. So just do it.
Just do it. Yeah. And trust yourself that you can do it.
Yes.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Andrea, for being my guest. It was my absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for all the insights that you keep on giving to everyone out there on LinkedIn. It's really, really wonderful and helpful. Thank you
Thank you
so
so much,
much.
Swati, for inviting me. It was a great conversation.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye bye.